This afternoon for our masterclass, we're having someone I really look at as a champion, someone that has overcome every limitation. If you watched on Scars to Stars, we had her speak to us. She was one of those heroines to me, because she didn't just go through disability of being a woman, because society looks at being a woman as a disability and less than others. She has been a person. She wasn't born like that, but she contracted polio at a certain age, and she has lived overcoming disability, and in a society where we have not appreciated people living with disabilities. And today she's here to give us her masterclass, and she's taking us, showing us how she's done it, her success journey, and not profile with profile. Now they are giving us their secrets to how they have made it. So please, let's welcome, put your hands together for Georgina. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me here this afternoon. But like Pastor said, I'll just give a brief background to who I am. My name is Georgina Mumba. I'm a public servant. I'm a disability inclusion advocate. That simply means I advocate for the inclusion of persons with disabilities into mainstream society, not only in the workspaces, but in every space that you can imagine where you can be as individuals. I advocate for opportunities, I advocate for access, advocate for open-mindedness to allow for interaction and engagement with persons with disabilities. So that's my work as a disability advocate. And as I mentioned, I'm a public servant. I'm a policy analyst by profession. I'm Lusaka based, and again, as Pastor said, I've not always been in a wheelchair. I was born just fine, but at the tender age of 2, I contracted polio, and that's how I ended up in my condition, and I've been like this ever since. So how did we get to today? How do you manage? How do you get to be a champion, as Pastor said? But I don't see myself as a champion, because it's not a race, and if it were a race, I'm not yet done. So we're still moving, but how did we get to today? For me, some of the critical factors that has led to who I am today and to what I am today and what we are doing today is, one, I always talk about a great support system. A great support system ensures that you're well informed. A great support system ensures that you know of your potential, regardless of who you are, regardless of your circumstances. My primary support system was my family. From a young age, when many people don't get to realize that persons with disabilities tend to start school fairly late in life. Part of it is because of rehabilitation. Sometimes you contract a disability and you may need rehabilitation, and from a tender age you find yourself that many times you're going to be in hospital, and that takes a lot of time. This is why you may find that certain kids with disabilities, they'll be 10, 11, that's when they're starting school. And that also fuels the idea that it's because they're not smart enough and everything, but there are factors that leads to that. But in my situation, I started school just like everybody else at the tender age of 5, and that to me informs me of what my family already thought of me. Irrespective of my condition, from day one, they inculcated that idea in me that I could be anything that I wanted to be, for as long as community or society allowed it. And I've since thrived from that time to where I am today. I have an undergraduate degree, I have a master's degree, and God willing, maybe someday I'll have a PhD. So, thank you. So that was just me trying to qualify what a great support system can do. And through my education, I've also benefited from great support from my teachers, great support from fellow students. I remember when I went to the University of Zambia, it was really hard. At the time, I used to use crutches, and it was hard for me to manage around UNZA and everything. So I had to graduate to start using a wheelchair. And it took my fellow students helping me from my room to the lecture theaters and back and everything in between. I didn't move in with my family. Some people used to think that some of my friends were my family members, but they're just people that I met through different classes. So that still informs what I'm talking about, a great support system. And even today, when I go for work, I depend on my colleagues in my environment to help me with mobility and everything. And here I am, even in this space. Even my coming here was with the support of Pastor. So the fact that I'm being part of the conversation that we're trying to engage with each other on is because of the support system that is in place. Beyond a great support system, I think it also helps just to have a decision in your life of what it is that you want to be. That does not happen in a day. Clarity comes over time. But for me, I remember at some point when I was at the University of Zambia, it was really hard. And many people could tell that I was struggling because it's a vast environment and it's not suitably built for someone in my condition. And so every so often people would ask me to say, what is it that drives you? For me, I always thought I only had two choices. It's either I was going to push myself and make something of myself, or I was going to end up on the streets, because my reality as a person with a disability is that the only people that you tend to see are people that end up on the streets as beggars, because that's the narrative that we have normalized in our society, that when you're disabled, you have to end up dependent on people, or you have to be a beggar on the streets. Therefore, I did not want to end up being that person. And that's what drove me every time. Every time I would break down and feel I could not continue, I would always think, between being on the streets for the rest of my life and crossing this challenge, which one would be easier? I would always remind myself to say, this has got a lifetime. This has got a life frame. I'm only here at the university for 4 years, but I could be on the streets for the rest of my life, and that is far too long. So that's what drove me. But along the way, there's also been tweaks and changes to the clarity on who I want to be and what I want to be. Today, here we are. I'm a disability advocate, sort of formally, but I never started disability advocacy in a formal sense. For me, it was just about speaking on things that were a challenge to me. But over time, I have learned that there's life beyond my challenges. Disability challenges are not only applicable to me, they're applicable to the sight impaired, that is the deaf, the blind, people with autism, and the entire spectrum of persons with disabilities. So today I know that when I'm advocating for persons with disabilities, I'm not only advocating for me, I'm not only advocating for persons in wheelchairs, I'm advocating for everyone across that spectrum. So that if anyone in this room is going to engage with anyone with a disability, you would remember to say the very challenges that Georgina could have spoken about are also applicable to this person. So how do I engage this person better? So that is when I talk about having an ambition in life, having a vision in life, having a goal in life, but being also open enough to know that you could twerk that, you could change that over time, because this is not a destination. As I mentioned at the beginning, it's not a race. We are taking one day at a time. The other factor that I would take into account, I think, is just mentorship is one other factor that I think is also very important in our journeys to be champions or change drivers, as I would call that. You don't know everything. In as much as you may have a very clear goal of where you want to be, but you don't know everything. Back in the day, the one person that I remember was visible to us as a person with disability, but was thriving, was the late Patricia Jerry. I don't know if some of you knew her. She was the permanent secretary at the Ministry of Justice. She was also in a wheelchair like myself. And as far as visibility of thriving disabled people, she's the only person that I knew of, or we knew of in our community. It's quite interesting that today there are so many other ambassadors of disabilities. Just today, I was talking about people that have stepped forward to be part of the upcoming political race, meaning there's progress in our conversations and there's progress in our community. But going back to mentorship, she came to our school several times. She spoke to us several times on what it took to thrive as a person with a disability, what it took to thrive as a woman, what it took to thrive as a Zambian. Because there are so many levels to these things. You are a subset, or you're at the center of so many identities. As Georgina, I'm a woman. As Georgina, I'm a disabled person. As Georgina, I belong to a different denomination. I'm a public servant. I hold so many identities, and so you need a mentor that would help you manage all these landmines that you may find. They may not only be landmines, they're not only challenges, but sometimes they're also opportunities. So from your mentors, you learn how to grow. You learn how to take criticism. You learn how to take failure. Because sometimes failure is one of those things that I believe we need to talk about constructively and positively. Many people find one challenge and they want to stop. But when you have a mentor and you open up to them, they would actually tell you to say, I have failed before. When I tell you here that I have an undergraduate degree and a master's degree, chances are that you're thinking, I just breezed through it. But there are many times that I failed, and I had to go to other people to help me through and to help me realize to say that does not take away my potential. It's just one hiccup along the way. It's just something that I'm not fully informed on or I'm not fully acquainted with. But if I took a different route, I can still succeed. So to me, that is what the value of mentorship does. The other issue is networking. Here I am in this room. This is a manifestation of networking. I met Pastor Jolomi through a colleague and a colleague and a colleague. It goes beyond and beyond and beyond. And here we are engaging. I'm meeting most of you here for the first time. This is networking. So you don't have it all. Not even your family has it all. Your immediate community doesn't have it all. You have to engage with people. You have to work with other people. Even as an advocate, as I mentioned, when I started, I was so obsessed with inclusion of persons with physical disabilities because that's the only community that I had engagement with. That's the only life that I knew of. But beyond that, through networking with other people, now I've learned of the entire spectrum. Probably it's not the entire spectrum of disability that I'm aware of. So for me, I think those are the key things that I can speak to. Like I mentioned, networking is important. Mentorship is important. I spoke of having a great support system. I spoke of having a goal in life and being open enough to twerking that goal. So for now, I think I'll leave it at that. Unless there could be questions, then we can pick it up from there.
So are there questions? Also, the microphone is there. So we can share the microphone. There's a question there.
Hi everyone. Wonderful story, madam.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to ask, you spoke of how through universities your friends had helped you to going to class and doing everything. I haven't heard you speak about any kind of maybe negative energy or negative issues that you had to deal with along the way. I think I'd like to hear about that.
As I mentioned, my graduation from using crutches to using the wheelchair was as a consequence of me having challenges at the university itself. And I had to be innovative enough to think, okay, if I cannot move around on my own, now what? Am I going to drop out, or I'm going to trust that somehow the university is going to help me? And that support came through the friendships that I've spoken about. But that doesn't mean everyone was willing to help me. And in the moment, at times it was very painful, because my roommate and I would be standing before a flight of stairs, and we are waiting for somebody to offer to help us lift the wheelchair. And people would just be passing by, almost as if we're invisible. Many a times that was very painful. It's very hard to live with people that are seeing your challenges, people that can understand that you're not able to do something, but something that is beyond you, and they still choose not to help. That's very painful. But it was part of the process, and I had to understand that it is not out of malice per se that people are not sometimes helpful. We're all just young kids, we're all just students at uni trying to thrive in that environment. Nobody left home to come to uni and be my carer or my help. I understood that. It was still painful, it was still challenging, but it was real. So negative energy is part of growth. It's part of you understanding that in the real world, not everyone is out there for you to help you thrive. Your number one cheerleader on your way to thriving is yourself. Every single day you have to show up for yourself before anybody else shows up. These people were of help to me because I woke up every day and showed up. They did not come to my room and wake me up and say, let's go to class. I had to be in their faces every day to remind them, I need your help, help me. Those that could, they did. Those that could not, they did not. And that's just the reality of life.
Yeah.
It's not a question per se. I just want to applaud you for the strength that you have within yourself. I do have a friend with a disability. I worked with her for 7 years at Fringina. Her name is Jenna.
Right.
I'm actually resonating because she was a very close friend to me. And you don't display any challenges if I see you. And same with Jenna, she never displayed any challenges. I know we do face different things, but your spirit, your power, your strength within you, I really love. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Alright, in the same vein, I just wanted to find out from you, you're an advocate, right, for the disabled. What challenges are you actually facing, passing on that information to the people who are disabled, and that they can actually do it themselves as well? Because I'm sure maybe some people have grown up from this element of just thinking, no, I cannot do anything better than what I am right now. So in your space, what are the challenges that you're actually facing in trying to educate and identify people with disabilities?
What are the challenges that I'm facing in engaging my fellow disabled people to show up for themselves? The thing about disability sometimes is that there's this narrative that there are people with disabilities that have a negative mindset. They do not think they can do anything for themselves or about themselves. It is true and it is not true. In the same way that we have able-bodied people that are just on the streets today with all the potential that they have, but they don't do anything with their lives. And similarly, there are persons with disabilities that, because of lack of support, lack of exposure, and lack of resources, they've not been able to graduate out of dependency. For me, all I do is, like I'm here, I talk and talk and talk. Wherever the seed falls and it germinates and grows, God will decide. The universe will decide. My part is to share my story. My part is to share what I have learned along the way, that which has worked for me. I'm not claiming that that which has worked for me will work for them, because like I said, disability is on a spectrum. The challenges that I face are not exactly the challenges that somebody, for example, that is deaf would encounter. As a society, we are yet to grow, to be open-minded enough about being inclusive to persons with disabilities. That is part of the challenge. In as much as I can preach to persons with disabilities to help themselves out of dependency, the onus is on all of you in here and everyone that would be listening today. The onus is on those that can help them. The onus is on society to ensure that we have accessible spaces. And when I talk about accessible spaces, I'm not just talking about not having stairs by the door, not having, by having accessible spaces in general. The infrastructure plays a very, very significant part. But it is the infrastructure in your minds that has a bigger chunk towards my success. In as much as I can go through that door, if you do not accept me, if you do not allow me to engage with you, or you do not give me the same respect that you are called each and everyone in this room, that whatever I have to say is worth listening to, then that door is really not doing much. So access goes beyond the physical infrastructure. It goes into our attitudes. It goes into our laws. It goes into the way, the culture that we have as a people, in churches, in homes, wherever we are. That is where accessibility is, and that's where the things that would help persons with disabilities graduate from a mentality of I cannot do anything with my life to I can do something with my life. As I mentioned about mentorship, it's about also visibility. When you can see people of your kind thriving, then you know I also can.
Wow, thank you very much. Wow, hearing your story is so amazing.
Thank you.
Because I once worked with someone who was disabled, and the guy could preach, the guy could do, the guy could jump, we could fight, it was, I just got to a level where I just understood that everyone we are just people. These are just bodies, this is just a house, but the person is inside.
Right.
So I would like to really hear from you. You said you're an advocate, you're advocating for disabled people, and I'd like to know, there are parents out there who are hiding their children, like, I don't want people to laugh at me, that I got a child who has a disability, and they suppress their kids until when there is no more, or they are not available, or they find a space to go out. Those kids, they have no option but to just go on the streets, and then they start having the street life, and they become beggars. So I don't know, is there anything that that you are doing so far that can enlighten both the society or the parents who are parenting such kids, that we have to bring them out, or bring the skill? There's a purpose that someone came on a wheelchair on earth to do, or someone got on the wheelchair when they grow up. There are people who got on the wheelchair at 20, some at 30, some at 40, but they are just taken in the same classroom, you're just going on the street, you have no option, like what you say. So is there anything that you are doing so far that people would like to know, that if I see someone who's disabled, we can contact to say, no, go meet her, she can have a word for you, or she can encourage? Is there any facility that you've brought up so far, or an organization that reaches out into the people who can't watch TV, people who can't get access to internet, so that they watch you talking and get inspired? Is there anything that you're doing so far?
Right. Thank you. What am I doing to ensure that parents with children and adults with disabilities do not fuel and encourage the idea of hiding persons with disabilities in their homes? As I mentioned, I do not have an organization per se. I'm a public servant and I'm exclusively committed to that. I do know that there's an organization for parents with children with disabilities. I do know that through the Zambia Agency for Persons with Disabilities and the Zambia Federation for Persons with Disabilities, there are various organizations that are providing support to parents of children with disabilities. But that being said, I just wanted to mention that parents hiding their children with disabilities is a manifestation of the kind of society that we are in. The very fact that parents also have children that they're very happy to tell every Jim and Jack that this is my child, that they're so proud of, is also a symptom of what we celebrate in our communities, what we celebrate in our societies. The fact that there are people that are hiding their children says that society shames them for having such children. It says that society do not accept these children. So to avoid that shame, to avoid the stigma that comes to them directly, and to avoid the stigma that comes to the child, that's why they end up hiding these children. So again, like I said, the onus is on us. What is it that we are doing in our communities when we identify a home where we know that there's a child with a disability in this home? Do we encourage those parents to bring those kids out? Amongst yourselves as youths, as kids, when you know that there's a teenager in that home, do you ever think of saying, oh, we're going for an activity, can we include that person in these activities? So the onus always goes back to those of us with the privilege to do something about the problem in our societies. So it is my responsibility, it is your responsibility, it is everyone's responsibility to ensure that the normality, the normalization of hiding persons with disabilities becomes something that we don't even get to talk about. Because the fact that we are comfortable to hide these people says something about the kind of people that we are, and it's quite shameful.
Thanks very much.
Thank
Hello, Georgina.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm glad to know you. I like the way you talked about networking. That is a very important point in life. You've got to network. But anyway, my question is, it's like you're now a policy analyst. What has been your journey in your work? I wonder how many years you've been, and then you talked about your school, but the work. How is the workplace like?
Thank you, ma'am. I've been in employment for about 14 years now, and I've had my highs and I've had my lows, but mostly I would say it's been a great experience. It's been a very informative journey. It is great to understand how governance and citizenship interacts, but by and large, it's been a great experience, especially that, like I mentioned, I'm a policy analyst, so you get to understand how policy gets to be policy, the challenges of coming up with policy, the challenges of implementing policy. But the great takeaway is that it takes a community to ensure that there's effective policy implementation. It takes myself, it takes the community, and it takes all of us. My work environment has been quite supportive most of the times. I've been lucky enough to have supportive superiors, supportive subordinates, but like every other environment, it cannot be all rosy. And you also learn something about the interaction of disability and the professional space, because sometimes the factors that lead to professional growth could be ableist in a way. The competitiveness that comes with the professional space may be challenging for persons with disabilities in certain instances. I would say, for example, speak of someone with mental health challenges or mental disabilities. The competitive space does not care for your mental stability. It doesn't care for your mental health. It doesn't care whether you can handle 10 hours straight of work. And sometimes it's very physically taxing, even for someone like myself. You have to put in the hours, and that's just fair for everyone because everyone puts in the hours. That's what contributes to success. That's what contributes to growth. And my body cannot just work like that. In as much as I want to be at the office the earliest and I want to leave the latest to be seen, to be the one that's putting in the extra hours and everything, my body at some point just cannot work with me. It just shuts down and I have to respond to that. In as much as I may want that promotion, but my body is just not working with me. And it also takes time for you to adapt to those realities, to say sometimes things may pass me over because I cannot just compete at the same level that my colleagues are competing, and I cannot adapt to what it takes for certain realities to manifest in your life. And for me, my spiritual part of my life has helped me in that there are times I have to pray to God to say, help me accept the things that I cannot change. And this does not mean to say my contributions and my professional contributions are not recognized in my workspace or my superiors. Like I said, I'm very lucky that I've worked with very supportive people and everything, but there are also just rules that they cannot bend just because I am disabled. That's not what inclusion is about. There are times that there are just certain things that are, and they may seem unfair. I don't know, someday, somewhere where we are hoping to go, we may rethink certain things, but there are also times when your disability just negatively affects your professional growth. And when I say that, I do not mean be lazy. I do not mean putting less than what is expected of your full potential or what is expected of your work culture, because we are all supposed to subscribe to that. And inclusion does not mean performing below par. It does not mean watering or making the whatever it is that making excellence less excellent. That's not what it means. But being disabled sometimes, some days, is going to affect that. And it takes the whole community to see how you can work around that. That's what inclusion is about. It's about being open-minded to certain realities. When you have someone who's disabled in your space, how are you going to interact with that? How are you going to make certain very, very difficult decisions? That's my experience.
How is the infrastructure like? Is it user friendly, or you feel that they need to change some, like say, to accommodate?
When you look at the Zambian infrastructure, most of it are old buildings, so most of them are not that accessible. But again, like I said, with the coming up with legislation that makes having a building inaccessible is illegal. Having someone who's got a challenge and you're not making adaptations to that is illegal. So it's an ongoing conversation. On my part, I have to be understanding that there are certain inclusions that are not possible in a certain time space. But for as long as we are open enough to say at some point reasonably we can make some changes, that is fine. So I would not claim to say the entire workspace is accessible, but there is enough accessibility that helps with my work time. When I'm there, it's reasonable, yes.
Do we have any other questions?
I'd like to ask, a lot of young people watching you today,
Yes, Pastor.
some people that may not have the support you had, they're just starting their journey. They're at the point where they're wondering, why me? What would you say, because the program is about passing the baton. It's about that generation. You've run your race, you've done so well. And what are you passing to that person? I may not even be somebody with disability, because disability can be mental, can be psychological too,
Right.
because of the way we are raised. With all the challenges you face, you still have come out to be successful. What do you think that person needs to focus on to become more successful, to run their race without looking at themselves as less?
Why me, and how can I exploit the potential in me? Why me is $1 million question, Pastor, because every so often, believe it or not, when the going gets tough, when Georgina cannot go on, when I meet that one challenge that still reminds me I'm disabled, when I break down and cry and ask my Lord, why me? What is it that picks me up again? What makes me take another step forward? I don't know. I really cannot say I really know what is it that pushes me in that moment. But one of the things is I always look back and I look at the last challenge that I thought was going to break me and did not break me. And I remind myself to say the same power that made me cross that bridge will make me cross this bridge again. Why me? I really don't know. Because if you ask me, I come from a big family. I'm a last born, but I'm the only disabled one. So I could ask over and over again, why me? And I never know the answer to that. The only thing that I ever tell myself is, if I have to bear this burden, let it be for something good in this world. For all my tears, for all the pain, let it be for something good in this world. We are always told that we cannot question God. We cannot ask the universe why. The least we can hope for is that whatever our life is for, whatever our burdens is for, whatever reason why I ended up in this wheelchair, it should not be just for vanity. It should not just be for the tears that I drop when it really hurts. Whatever that is, whatever those tears are supposed to mean in this world, I pray that it shall leave some good in this world. I hope that in some way it shall tell of the glory of God, the goodness of God, the magnanimity of God, how big God can be. It can remind people. I hope that it can remind people to say, even when God takes away your legs, you can still thrive. Even when it seems like everything has been taken away from you, you can still thrive. So to anyone that is beginning today, to any child, to any adult that is thinking, I'm stuck, I cannot do this. Many a times we find people that find themselves disabled later in their lives, and they have a moment of a crisis to understand, now what? I'm stuck in a wheelchair, now what? there's still life beyond a disability. There's still life beyond a challenge. There's still life beyond a hiccup in your life. There's so many resources out there. There's so many people. There's so many networks that can help you to find your purpose again, to find your core again, to find that power which God has put into you, for you to thrive again, for you to bloom and live goodness in this world.
Wow. Once upon a time in my life, Pastor, I would write hearing somebody speak, and I would write something, and that went for years.
Right.
But as you were speaking, something came back to me, and I would love to read that to you. And I've titled that Georgina Mumba, Beyond Limits.
Right.
You walk seated, but you have made strides that have longer legs than the tall. You stand taller seated than the broad-shouldered visible men. Your voice resounds louder than an orchestra of trained, renowned vocalists. You are an epitome of courage, the fire that ignites against water. You are the current that subsides turbulent tributaries into flow. You are God's glory, arrayed in beautiful ambience to shine in darkness, giving many light to see hope. You are running a race that most legs can't handle. You are dancing God's tune far better than flexibility. You are beyond limits, phenomenal woman.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. That's so beautiful.
The first time I heard you on Scars to Stars,
Right.
I stood, I couldn't sit. I listened to you talking, standing up. I might have been alone in that living room, but I gave a standing ovation to the phenomenal woman that you are. And the many more stages that await for your voice to be heard. Because you will stand tall, seated. You will speak to great people that are waiting to hear your voice. And we might see ability, but there's a lot of disability in the minds of people, with a lot of things that challenge their ability. And so we await to hear greatness that lies in you.
Thank you. Thank
this
you so
is
much.
not even the start of the so many stages that await to hear you internationally, locally, because you've encouraged beyond, and you are beyond limits. Thank you so much for having spent time with us.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your words of encouragement. I'm really humbled.
What you have shared is not easy, but this is the glory of God that shines brighter than everything that able-bodied people can ever do. You have challenged each and every one of us in various ways. You have challenged the listeners across nations. And we are saying, because of you, we're breaking barriers and going beyond limits because you lead. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's rise up from here and just keep that ovation, because this has been a beautiful session. It has been life-changing. It has been transforming. Thank you so much. May the Lord continue to shine His glory through you. Just one more thing, can I just give you that credit?
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We look forward to reading about you. We look forward to hearing about you.
Right.
We look forward to see what God is going to do through you that He's already done. You are a miracle. You are a testimony. Thank you so much. One more time, let's
Wonderful. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you. Please be seated. Georgina, we can't thank you enough. Clara has mentioned that. And we look forward to your program starting on television very soon. Once we finish all the things we need to finish, we look forward to you talking to the nation every time. Okay? Thank you all. That's for today. And we're looking forward to the rest of our training as we continue tomorrow. Okay? God bless you. Any other questions for Georgina before she goes? So look out for her on CBC very soon. Before next week is over, we'll tell you when you'll be seeing her on television. Mrs. Mazaba is on Sunday, 16 hours. Georgina is going to be, what day would you like? Sunday? What day?
Whichever one works for you.
Okay. So we'll look at it. Maybe on Sunday we'll just load it,
Right.
pack it, so the whole family can benefit from it. Thank you so much. We are so grateful.
Thank you so much for the time, and thank you for everyone for your support and for sitting here. Thank you for your time, and I hope we're going to meet again. Right.